Hello, hopefully you can hear me. If anybody starts to come on, could you please give me a thumbs up or put a comment in just so I know that you can hear and see me. I can see there's one person viewing, so if you can just give me a thumbs up to let you know that you can actually hear me, that'd be great, because this is all new to me. So if somebody can put a thumbs up just to let me know you're here. Hiya Emma. Oh goodness, no pressure. So somebody I know is already watching. Yes, I'm coming completely out of my comfort zone and I'm coming here. My name is Natashya Sheppard and I'm a dog trainer behaviourist. I've been working with dogs professionally in this capacity for over 10 years now. I've worked with dogs and other animals for a long time before that. I'm still learning, like most professionals. I can't remember the exact name, but there is a saying: the more you know, the more you realise there is to know. So I wanted to come on today because I know a lot of people have got puppies over lockdown, and I know a lot of people are looking for help and advice with them. Everything I'm going through with you today, you can apply to dogs of any age, but I'm targeting this at puppies just because this area I know is an area that needs support at the moment. I'm hoping you can all hear me because at the moment, for some reason, I can't see any comments. So if nobody's typed many comments, I will check through at the end in case there's any questions or anything and go through them then. But if I could just get some thumbs up or something to know that you can all hear me, because at the moment I can't seem to see anything, which is slightly frustrating. So I'll wait until I've got a thumbs up from somebody to know that actually you can hear me and this is actually going out into the big wide world. What's that one do? No, let's come from that. Okay. Sadly, I can't see any feedback, but I'll make a start anyway. So that's one of the things I've got to stop doing, saying so. You'll have to excuse me. It's one of my habits that I get when I'm a little bit under pressure. When we're looking at behaviour, what does that mean? So I'd like to just get some definitions so hopefully we all then understand what we're talking about. Behaviour really is the actions of an individual in response to stimuli. So that stimuli can be internal, so biological influences such as hormones, and external, so environmental influences such as temperature, noises, and those within the environment. So when we're looking at behaviour, all those things will affect that individual. And that's one of the things I want to sort of remember. Every dog is different. They're an individual. Now, things that I'm talking about here is generalising, but that's only because I've got an hour to talk about. But I will hopefully keep reminding you that we need to apply it to that individual in front of us. So things that will influence our puppies are developmental stages, so both their physical and their hormonal development, their health, are they in pain, obviously they'll be growing, their experience, that will impact upon their behaviour and how they respond to stimuli in the environment, and the environment, so where they are in that point in time when they're displaying certain behaviours. So the 4 areas I want to go over today, and I'm not going to be able to get into as much depth of these areas as I'd like to, but because I've only got an hour, and if I go on for too long, I know I'll frazzle your brains. So the 4 main areas I'm going to be chatting about is diet, which I know is can be a bit controversial, but I will talk about that. Sleep, because I think that's a massive thing that we miss. And it is a massive consideration for our puppies. Toilet training, because that will certainly affect how they're behaving at that point in time. And interaction and training. So they're the 4 main areas that I want to go over with you all. So I'll start with the biggie, and that's diet. Because this not just influences physical development and responses to things, but also behavioural. Now, this is something that I'm still learning about. And over the 10 years of working with dogs and expanding my skills and knowledge and doing training and studying for degrees and things like that, I have learned more about this, and I've also now personally gone down a bit of a rabbit hole in looking into this more in depth. So diet has a huge effect upon our dogs, and when we talk about diet, it's quite an emotive subject because we all have our belief systems, and I've had to challenge my belief system because I started off with a veterinary background. I started off doing vet nurse training, and I've worked in practices doing admin and also behaviour. So I've had a big influence from the veterinary side of things, and then since moving away from that, I've tried to be as open-minded as possible, and slowly my cognitive bias is shifting to another area. So when we're looking at diet, we need to make sure it's biologically appropriate for that individual. So that will be influenced by breed, by size, again by stage of development, and we need to ensure that it doesn't contain any additives, colourants or preservatives, and be aware of sugars, because when we're working with our puppies and using food as rewards, quite often we forget to check what's in those rewards. So that's something else to be aware of. Now, as we know, or I say as we know, dogs are primary carnivores, so that means they are designed to eat a diet mainly based from protein and from meat. So when we're looking at this, it gets even more complex because it needs to be a digestible and available protein to the dog. So studies have shown how insufficient protein actually affects the dog, not just biologically, in slower growth, in delayed sexual maturity, in poor skin and coat, in obviously things like the skeletal development. It can adversely affect that. But also behaviourally, if the protein level isn't enough, and that's in a sense of protein that an individual can digest and actually process itself, it actually affects behaviour. And this can mean that the studies have actually proven that it comes out in dogs who are it's unable to attract their attention and hold their attention. So obviously when we're looking at puppies, bless them, because of their, it's all new to them and they haven't learnt necessarily what we're doing when we're engaging with them. Attention is something that we need to train them. So if we're having a influence from diet that's making this more difficult, that can cause conflict and issues. And protein is the building blocks of life. So it's really, really important that the protein levels are appropriate for the individual. Now, when we're looking at the dog food industry, the minimum, so again, there's no standards or maximum yet, but the minimum they state is 22.5% for puppies. So this is a minimum, and that's something I kind of always thought, oh yeah, about 22.5%, but then you realise, no, that's the minimum that they need. So it's not what they need, that's the lowest that they need. So fresh meat provides all the essential amino acids a dog needs. And the essential amino acids are things that the dog's body can't produce itself. It's something it can only obtain from its diet. So these are things that we need to ensure the dog is getting because they help to regulate the biological functions. And if these are lacking in the diet, then we're going to start to see issues. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about when it comes to diet, because like I say, it's a complete minefield and we all have a lot of kind of our own personal views on it, which can make us a little bit blinkered into looking at different things. But I am researching about it. A fantastic book that I'm working my way from is this book here, Feeding Dogs, by Dr. Brady, because it's a really big book and I'm working my way through it slowly. But this is fantastic because it actually compiles a lot of studies that have been done on dog foods and effects of diet and nutrition on dogs. So it's brilliant because it's got all the information in there, so you don't have to go researching everywhere for it. It's all in one place. But as you can see, it's a hefty book and I'm still working through it myself. But I am just going to focus on protein for the benefit of this because obviously I've got a few things to cover. So when we're looking at the diets, we need to make sure that, because I'm talking about this from a behavioural point of view and looking at placid puppies. So when I say placid, it's puppies that engage, that are, I'm using a lot of labels here, so who are showing appropriate behaviours, who are not getting themselves too stressed. So they're not charging around. Obviously puppies charge around, but with, you know, excessively, that we're not seeing excessive amounts of behaviours such as mouthing and jumping up, because these are all just forms of communication. So, and dogs that are attentive, that are able to engage, who are able to take on information and who can learn effectively. So the reason why I'm focusing on protein in food is because protein affects serotonin levels, and serotonin is the hormone in the body which regulates mood state, and it also has a huge impact upon sleep, which is the next thing that I'm going to be going on to, so it's going to kind of lead me into that. So serotonin controls the sleep-wake cycles, and it plays an important role in the inhibition of anger and aggression. So when we're looking at this, it's really important that we're, again, going back to this protein and it being a digestible protein, because otherwise we can end up with an individual who isn't able to control that, the more kind of aggressive displays, because they haven't got the right levels of the hormones in there. So it also really is important in cognition, so learning, in the reward system. So when we're looking at reward-based training, it means we can optimize on this, because, you know, their reward system's engaged, that they're, you know, it's going to be really powerful using that, and learning. So it's so important when we're looking at these things. And high levels of serotonin actually will, because serotonin is a precursor for melatonin, which is the sleep hormones, it actually helps to keep our dog sleeping. So that's kind of leading me now into the next section. So I've just wanted to go over that. So we're looking at a biologically appropriate diet for the individual that doesn't contain any additives or colorants or preservatives, that is appropriate for our individual. And there's lots of information on this. One of the best places I find to check certain foods, because there's so many diets out there, is, as far as I'm aware, it's an independent website, and it's called www.allaboutdogfood.co.uk. And that's a brilliant website, because it's a bit like confused.com for dog foods, and you can go in there and it gives you an unbiased view. It lets you know the different levels of the nutrients in the food. It also makes you aware of any additives and not natural ingredients. It also lets you know the nutritional value of that food to your dog. And sometimes it's quite surprising when you go on to it what this actually comes out as. So have a look at that. Check out the food that you're doing. Have a look at diets. One of the things I was going to say, you're probably, those of you that are interested in food and nutrition have probably guessed that my way of thinking is that we should be feeding our dogs a raw or fresh diet, but that needs to be appropriately nutritionally balanced for the individual. Now, when we're looking at serotonin levels in dogs as well, we can encourage the levels to be appropriate by feeding foods that contain that naturally boost the serotonin in their system. So these are things like salmon, turkey, eggs and spinach. So these things will help to boost serotonin levels in an individual as well. So we can use our diet and manipulate it slightly if we feel we just need a little bit of a boost in that area. So as I've touched upon it, serotonin controls sleep, and sleep is one of the areas that I think gets missed quite a lot when it comes to puppies. One of the things I've noticed over the years is there's an increasing trend, which is fantastic, for enrichment, for stimulation, for engaging with our puppies. But one of the things that I think has been a payoff of that is actually there's not enough focus of ensuring puppies get enough sleep. Now, a puppy, so I'm saying sort of pre-6 months of age, and I'm using that general term, young puppies need between 18 and 20 hours of sleep a day. So that's a massive chunk of their day. And it's no wonder when we think about how much, especially in those early few months, how quickly our puppies are developing and growing. So, they're growing at an exponential rate, they're developing, they're building all those lovely neuron patterns in their brain is developing or growing. So that takes a lot of energy. So again, going back to the food, we need to make sure we've got the calorie density that the dog needs and the growth that the dog needs and the protein for these building blocks to build all these lovely things and this really nice brain. So, you know, and during sleep as well, the brain has time to process all the information that it's taken on board during the time the dog's awake. So it gives it that chance to kind of sort through the information and to select the information that it finds is going to be most useful to it and start to filter out the things that it doesn't need so much because it's not been so useful to it. So again, this is where our reward-based training comes in so well, because if we can put the emphasis on the behaviours that we want by making them rewarding, we can utilise these developmental stages. We can utilise the fact our dogs are growing and developing and their brain is growing and developing, and really, you know, maximise the opportunity we have through reward-based training to help our puppies learn the desirable behaviours. And this is where the sleep is so important. If we don't give our puppies the opportunity to rest, they're not going to have the time to process the information. They're not going to have the time to filter the information out. And apart from that, they're also not going to be calm, because as we all know, if you have lack of sleep, as I mentioned before, your serotonin levels decrease and you start to feel more fractious. You're more easily triggered by things in the environment that maybe give you a negative response. So these things are so intertwined. So when we're looking at our puppies and their behaviour and the things that influence them, sadly there isn't just one solution. There's lots of different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that we need to look at and try and piece it all together to build the best situation we can for our dogs. Another thing, talking about tiredness and hunger, because sometimes behaviours which are just an expression and actions of an individual can look very similar. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are looking at our puppy, and you know, obviously when we're looking at diet as well, one thing I've got to mention is making sure our puppy gets enough to eat, because quite often when our puppies are displaying what some people class as undesirable behaviours, they're just perfectly normal behaviours, but these would be jumping up, mouthing, maybe grabbing hold of clothes, maybe barking. These behaviours are expressions and actions when the dog is trying to communicate something to us. And this could be simply that I'm really hungry. Our dogs aren't able to just go and, you know, open up a cupboard or go to the fridge and get their food out. So they are trying to evoke a response from us. So that could be, I'm hungry, which can look quite similar to, I'm really tired and I need to sleep, but I don't know how best to access my area for rest. So I'm going to come to that human and I'm going to try to communicate to them and get their attention. So you can see that quite often, you know, we have to look at the big picture and try and rule them out. You know, is the dog hungry? Is the dog thirsty? Does the dog need to sleep? Does it simply just need the toilet? Again, you know, when we're looking at expressions of behaviour, quite often when our dogs are toilet training, they will become what we call frustrated, so they will become distracted. They will be sniffing a lot because they're looking for somewhere appropriate to go to the toilet. They will maybe come up to us and start tugging at our clothes or tugging at our legs to sort of, you know, they're trying to communicate to us, I have a need and I need that need to be fulfilled. So it's down to us as a human to think about what that need could be and then start to offer. And with toilet training, it's really important to ensure our dogs are going outside as often as possible, or going to the toileting area as often as possible. Because again, like with the feeding, they can't just go and access the outside. They need us to take them out there. So it's good to have a regular routine. I always advise my clients that I'm working with to keep a toilet diary, because then again, looking at the individual, you can get an idea of the pattern of when your puppy needs to go to the toilet. And you can also then start to build the routine around that. setting an alarm on our mobile phones is great because we're all very busy nowadays and we quite easily get distracted. So, you know, I say set an alarm on the hour, and then you'll know to take your puppy out. Then after a few days of doing the toilet diary, you'll start to get an idea of the pattern. So then you can start to set more tailored alarms to your individual dog. And then as your puppy learns what those sensations mean, because obviously, as we know, when you need the toilet, it's quite an irritating feeling, they will then learn behaviours that will get the response from us. So it might be that they'll start to go and sniff. So we know, okay, right, the puppy's sniffing around, they're acting distracted, they're not engaging with us, or when they do, it's a lot of mouthing going on there. I'll just take them outside to see maybe if they need the toilet. We can start to build up a picture of what our individual dog is like. And then going back to the sleeping, we need to ensure that we have a regular routine, because our puppies are learning and developing, and, you know, we're doing lovely things with them. They won't necessarily want to switch off and go to sleep. So it's important that we have a nice, calm environment for the puppies to settle in. So this should be away from thoroughfares of the house, in a nice quiet area of the house, where they're not going to be disturbed. I've always drawn curtains or pulled blinds in that room if I've got my puppy resting in there, because again, as we know, if there's, I mean, not at the moment this time of year, but when there's bright, brilliant sunshine, that will naturally be more likely to stimulate them and keep them awake. It's also important that it's warm, because puppies aren't as good as regulating their body temperatures as adult dogs, and they're more susceptible to changes in temperature. So especially this time of year, it's important to make sure it's a nice, warm, cosy place and that they feel safe and secure in there. So things like crates can be useful when they're introduced positively and done in the right way. So feeding them in there, making it a nice environment, and helping our puppies to understand that's the place to go and rest. So guiding them into there and having this regular routine, going back to what I suggested earlier, really helps. And I kind of always have in my head, you know, the eat, sleep, rave, repeats, because I think that's such a useful thing. So my version of that is eat, well, sorry, it all starts with sleep actually, because obviously in the morning they wake up. So it's sleep, eat, toilet, rave, repeat. And when I say rave, that will be the interactions, the playing with our puppies, the training. But it's quite a good mantra to get used to. So then the puppies are getting regular sleep, regular food, regular toileting, regular food, and regular interaction. And this helps to build up healthy habits. And this gets them used to routine and us used to helping them when they might be expressing how they're feeling. And again, feelings is an internal state. We don't know what they're feeling. We can only look at the behaviours that they're displaying, and they're, you know, these behaviours are showing us that they're trying to communicate something to us. So when we're looking at our puppies and we're looking at behaviours, it's really important, like I say, to look at those areas to see, okay, well, why is my puppy maybe jumping at me? Why is my puppy maybe grabbing my clothing? Why is my puppy maybe mouthing me? Is it because it's a developmental stage and it's teething? Do I need to fulfill that need by ensuring it's got appropriate chew toys around? Okay, so if that's the case, I'm going to prepare and I'm going to have objects like field kongs that my puppy can have regularly throughout the day to give it an outlet for that natural behaviour that it needs to express on something appropriate. Okay, that doesn't seem to work. My puppy's not looking like it's wanting to chew. Okay, so maybe then it needs the toilet again, so I'll take it outside and see if it needs the toilet. And if that doesn't work, maybe actually they're having a bit of a growth spurt, and maybe I need to increase the volume of food that they're having to ensure that they've got enough nutrients for their growth and development, so they're not hungry and they're not feeling hungry. And then also balancing that with mental and physical stimulation. So with puppies, we need to regulate and moderate exercise because they're growing and developing, and they have a very interesting floating skeleton. If ever you've seen a X-ray of a puppy skeleton, it's actually quite shocking at how, you know, they have gaps between the growth plates and how it's floating. It always amazes me that they actually manage to stay all together. But it doesn't surprise me then when you see puppies moving, because they're all quite floppy and they're not well coordinated until they're developing. So when we're looking at play, it's important that we're doing appropriate games for their stage of development, for their physical size, so nice low games, and looking at this, building this calmer puppy who isn't feeling the need to escalate its behaviour, to jump, to shout at us basically, because the lower level of communication isn't maybe being reached by us, or we're not quite understanding it. Because training to me is about communication, so until we've built the training, communication in place, our dogs won't necessarily understand what we want from them, and they're also learning how to get from us what they need from us. So nice slow games, stopping and starting, using the food rewards to mark when they do something we like. And also, so again, if they stop in the game, mark that, because play should be balanced. It shouldn't be one, doing a behaviour all the time. So again, if they were chasing each other, you'd be looking for a stopping and starting within that game to show it is actually true play. And making sure that when we're looking at our puppies and we're thinking about the behaviours we want, because quite often with young dogs, my clients say, I don't want them to do this, I don't want them to do that, and then so I will say, well, what would you like them to do instead, or what would you like it to look like instead? And then that way it switches our mindset on to focusing on the things we don't want and being able to focus on the things we do want, because the moment that happens, we're more aware and we can then start to reinforce these behaviours. So as my top said, reinforcement drives behaviour. By definition, reinforcement will make behaviours continue. So if our puppies are displaying behaviours that we don't want or don't particularly like, say for example jumping up or grabbing clothing, that individual is finding that behaviour reinforcing in some way. So what we need to do is find a suitable alternative behaviour that we can switch the reinforcement onto. So we're saying this is actually more rewarding than that, so this behaviour is a thing that you want to start doing. And with behaviours like jumping up, one of the easiest things to work on is teaching our puppies to have forepaws on the ground. And quite often we miss this. We do all the lovely things. People, want to start training them lots of different cues and start to work on things like the sit, which I'll come back to that, which when we think about functions, it doesn't really serve many functions, but things like forepaws on the ground for greeting is a fantastic thing to teach our dogs. It teaches them that they don't have to, work so hard to get attention, to engage with us. All they have to do is approach and stand there and they will get attention. They will get food. It's a great thing, and they'll be fed down on the ground. Because when we're looking at reinforcing behaviours, we need to look at producing a marker for that behaviour, so the dog starts to understand that when that marker is used, reinforcement will be delivered, because that will help build really good associations for the dog. It gives us a tool then that we can use to build clear communication with our canine learner. So for example, if I'm working on forepaws on the ground, we would, as the dog approaches, toss a treat to the dog, again to keep it on the ground, so as it gets closer and closer and closer, it's being rewarded each time it approaches with its forepaws on the ground. So by the time it gets to you, you can then place food on the ground. And then we want to keep it down the ground, so we very slowly put food on the ground for it every second. Or we might do that for a count of 10, so they get lots of reinforcement for that behaviour. So their brain is like, yeah, this is a really good thing to do. When I walk up to that person, I'm getting fed and good things happen. And over periods of time, going back to influences on puppy experience, they build these good experiences and they learn that in that situation, in that environment, if they behave in that way, good things happen. So it really starts to help our dogs to build associations and understanding of situations. The 4 key behaviours I like to teach puppy owners are attention. And when I say attention, I mean the dog responding and orientating towards the person who's calling their name. That's as simple as that. So it's basically Person calls their name, the dog responds, so it turns to them. We then mark it with a verbal yes or a click of a clicker, and then the dog gets reinforcement, so it gets fed. So then the dog learns, if I respond to you when you call my name, good things happen. Without that, we then really are stuffed to progress training. So that's something really important to start with at the beginning. I also like to teach targeting behaviour of a hand touch. So this is the dog targeting their nose onto the palm of the hand. I find this really useful because it helps build a nice association with hands for the puppies. So they're looking at nose bumping the hand, not grabbing the hand, because hands can be quite annoying to young dogs because we tend to want to fuss them, you know, and bother them. And going back to the sleep, you know, when we're looking at sleeping, how many times do our puppies get interrupted by people wanting to cuddle them because they look so cute? Please don't. You know, there's a real value in the old saying, let sleeping dogs lie. Let your puppy sleep. Don't disturb them. Yes, they may look cute and cuddly while they're sleeping, but let them be, because they need to grow and they need to develop. Now we go back into the behaviours. So yeah, so this one really is, the key is about timing. We need to teach our dogs that the behaviour is nose on hand. So whilst the nose is on the hand, we mark. That could be a verbal yes or good, and then we feed. So this is great because we can then use it for directional things, and it can be the basis of a recall, it can be the basis of then a hand target, so we can then use it for directional work for them to help physically move them in a force-free way. Also, the touch is great because the dogs think it's this most amazing, it says all they have to do is stick their nose on your hand. That's it. So with young puppies who are investigating the environment around them, checking everything out with their mouth to see, you know, is it something I can chew on? Is it something edible? You know, getting information from that through using their mouth. If we don't want them to do that, all we need to do is physically remove them by asking them to come and target our hand, and then we can distract them with something else. So we're not causing confrontation, we're not forcing them to come away from that object. They're choosing to come away because they know all they need to do is put their nose on a hand and they get food. Brilliant. Or they get a game, or they get praise. So it's a really, really useful behaviour for very young dogs and older dogs as well. Another thing I really like to teach young puppies as soon as possible is the drop behaviour. So physically ejecting something from their mouth. Because going back to, you know, how puppies and most young animals explore the world around them by putting things in their mouth. Again, we don't want to be forcing our dog's mouth open and prizing things out of there, because from a safety aspect, we might need to do this. So we want to teach them that if they eject, so spit out that object, again, food is presented and gets dropped. So it's a really, really useful behaviour to teach them. And it's a really, really valuable behaviour to teach them. And also the down, because again, that's a nice position behaviour for them. We can use it then for stationing, for them to learn to go and station on a bed or a mat. So this will help them in social situations. So when we're out, say for example, in the days that we can go out again, and we want to be able to take our dogs with us, it gives them something in the environment, a cue that they understand when that mat or bed is presented, I go to it and lie down and relax, and it gives them that safe base, that safe place to be. So it's a really useful behaviour, the down. And again, being in that down position can naturally help them to relax, and, you know, because obviously if they're not having to hold themselves physically, they can relax into it. It can help build a more positive association with certain situations. Also, it's a good one to practice in the evenings, you know, when people are not necessarily engaged with their puppies because they're on their phones or they're watching TV. It will teach the puppy that if they are in a down position, they can then be rewarded for being in that position, and if you want them to remain there for longer, you can give them something like a filled Kong or something that's suitable and safe for them to chew on, and it will give them an outlet for their natural need and desire to chew, and that will help to calm them and keep them engaged in an appropriate behaviour, rather than looking to us necessarily for that attention and focus. I'm just going to see what's going on here because I can't seem to see any comments, and I don't know if anyone has said anything, and I apologise if you have, because I can't see if any of you are talking to me. I can see some of you are watching me, and this is really frustrating. So let me see. I'm going to write a comment here, and if somebody could respond, that would be great, just so I know this is working properly. So I can write a comment. Can anyone reply to me? Let's see. Just going to give it a couple of minutes. Or is nobody talking to me? Let's see. Because I just feel really bad that if I've missed... Oh, well, that just makes it brighter, sorry. If I've missed any comments or any questions, I'm going to feel really bad. Can't see. Could somebody just write something? Just so I can see. You're probably writing something and it's not coming up. Right. Let's see. In recap, so when we're looking at having our puppies become confident, well-rounded individuals, we want to be looking at the diet, so the food and nutrients that they're getting, making sure they're appropriate for the individual, that the protein source is appropriate and available to the dog, and that it's a minimum, a very, very bare minimum of 22.5%. And we also need to be making sure that they're getting enough sleep and rest in an environment that's suitable, so somewhere quiet, warm, with you know, subdued lighting. I always, because I have a young son, I've always as well put low music on in the background, like classical music, and I love it because some of the studies have proven that reggae music is calming for dogs, so something like reggae music low in the background as well, because that helps also to drown out the background noise and the hustle and bustle of the household, so the dogs can truly rest undisturbed. And another tip, there's some great products like the Pet Remedy natural calming spray, and I like to just spray that on the area where the puppy's bed is a few minutes before they go in, because that will just help with their olfactory system to naturally help to calm them and relax them and make that area a really nice, pleasant place for them to be, ensuring that you've built a really good positive association with their bed and their sleep environments. They know good things happen in there, so that's where they may get food. I mean, it's nice and calming and relaxing and a nice place to be generally. Ensuring that we are giving them opportunities to go to the toilet as much as they need, and that we are building this nice routine so that it can help them get used to what's happening, makes life a bit more predictable, which can be comforting and reassuring. That they're getting the stimulation they need through social interactions that are appropriate for their age and stage of development, and environmental interactions with sights, sounds, scents, and physical and tactile interactions, so walking on different surfaces and experiencing people handling them in different ways as well, obviously gentle and force-free, but in a positive manner where they're getting rewarded, where we're carefully ensuring that the individual is not showing signs of stress, so isn't excessively panting, hasn't put his ears back, or it's tail tucked, isn't stiff and hunched over, things like that. We want them to have low muscle tension, which I'm trying to do myself, and you know, show that they're physically relaxed in that situation. And one of the other things I like to teach my clients to do is rewarding their dogs for doing nothing. You know, I have a busy household, my dogs get, you know, really nice exercise. We're lucky we have, you know, access to forestry tracks and lovely walks and routes. But sometimes when we're in the house, I need them to just be stationed in their beds out the way, and I don't even have to ask them to do that. They will naturally go and do that because they like and need that rest. They're adult dogs, so they don't need the 18 to 20 hours of sleep, but they do need up to 16 hours of sleep a day being an adult dog. So they still need a lot of sleep. So they will naturally choose that because it's nice, the environment's set up for them and they like it there. And sorry, I just had a complete mind blank where I was going with this. So yeah, so ensuring that they get that interaction, but also the rest, that we're looking at teaching them sometimes that doing nothing is good. So quite often I like to teach my puppy parents to do nothing training, where they will just, go, if their dog's there doing nothing, just gently toss it a treat, and again think about treat placement. So you need to be a good aim with this, or you go over and you calmly place it if they're laying down in between their two paws by their mouth, or feeding them in position. And or again, the 4 paws on the ground training, reinforcing that behaviour of having 4 paws on the ground is good. Being calm, relaxed, even just giving them feedback sometimes is a really good thing to do. If my dogs are doing something I like, I'll just say nice, and they're like, oh, thank you. When you're looking at reinforcing behaviour, it comes in many forms. Food is a great way of reinforcing them, as long as it's something the dog likes. We need to make sure that when we're doing these are things that our individual finds nice and enjoyable and is reinforcing for them, not what we think is reinforcing for them. And that comes through having experience and through interacting with them. You can do preference testing with food to see which food they prefer over another, and something that's really nice. But again, tiny tasty amounts. I'm not saying let's get overweight dogs, but we're using lots of tiny tasty morsels. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I always use a chocolate cake analogy, because it's like when you have a small bit of chocolate cake, you're like, I want more. If you have a whole slice, well, if you're like me, you have a really big slice, by the end of it, I think, I feel a bit sick. So whereas if I have a little bit, I want more. And again, with those tiny tasty morsels, they enjoy it, they want more. So they get lots of them, and it builds lots of really good associations, really strong reinforcement for situations. And we're paying into that bank account of life experience. So they're learning what we would call the calmer behaviours, so the lying down, the 4 paws on the ground, the behaviours then that we're looking for, what we're teaching them with the attention, with the touch, with the down, with the drop. All these things end in rewards. They're reinforcing, and they become more common. The dog will do them more and more and more, because by definition reinforcement drives behaviour, so they keep offering these things. So what we need to make sure is we keep giving them feedback for doing it, that we're it takes time to build associations. So having things set up in the environment is really important, and as I said, environment influences behaviour. So we need to have reinforcement accessible so we can deliver it when these behaviours are occurring. So having pots around the house set up with treats in them, so we can get them, they're on hand. We're not having to think, oh, I like that, but now I've got to go and chop something up. We've got it all ready. It's that preparation is key. Oh, hi, Susie. Yeah, I've got comments. That's good. Thank you. So I know that someone who's listening. Calm puppy here. His job is instantaneous now. He doesn't even think. Thank you, Susie. So Susie is somebody who's worked with me with her gorgeous spaniel boy. He's very, very clever. And drop is one of the things we worked on early on. And it's lovely to hear that his drop is instantaneous now. So, yeah, that's why it's one of the things that I like to teach first of all, because, it's such an important behaviour. And people get fixated on certain things that they think they should teach their dogs. But like I say, they're the 4 first ones, because there's so many things I like to teach my puppies that I'm working with. They're the first four ones that I'd say, okay, these are the key ones. These are the ones we want to work on. And these are the ones that we want to build this strong association with. So our dogs offer these behaviours lots and lots and lots. And then they just become, a means of communication. So we then have, once we've taught these things, we've then put a cue to them. So then when we communicate to our dogs and we cue these behaviours, i.e. say the word, or we have a physical action, the dog knows, I know what that means, that's a good thing, and then I respond in this way and something good happens to me. So it really helps them to understand and navigate the world around them. So our puppies then become calmer, because the world is easy to understand. They know that we understand them, and they then start to understand us. So we then build a better relationship with our dogs, and we start to understand each other better. And we then have this dialogue that we can use, and we can start working together and start understanding each other better. And like I say, for me, training is not by any means about control. It's about communication, and it's about clear communication, and we want it to be enjoyable for all. So when we're looking at teaching things, we will obviously need to mark the behaviours. So we have to set the situation up so the environment elicits that behaviour. So say, for example, when I'm teaching drop, the easiest way of doing that is dropping a piece of food on the ground. Because if the dog's got something in its mouth, especially when that something's inedible, and you drop a tasty tidbit, there's no brainer. They're going to drop what's in their mouth and eat that tasty tidbit. So we're starting to elicit that behaviour, so then we can mark it and then reinforce it by feeding them for offering that behaviour. And sometimes we might need to use maybe, some physical movements. Again, the touch can be useful because, again, I want my dog to move away from that piece of wood that it's chewing, because I'm worried it might get splinters in its mouth. So I know I will go into its line of vision and I'll present my hand, and the dog, because it's had a history of reinforcement of this behaviour, will look at my hand and go, I know what that hand means. It means if I nose bump it, I get something nice. So it will come over and nose bump my hand, and I can mark and be like, yes, and then feed the dog. And then I can ask for another behaviour, and then we can walk off together. So hopefully you have found this interesting. I always feel like because I get so excited about wanting to share information with people, I always worry that I bombard people a little bit too much of information. But I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it useful. It'd be really nice to see some comments and your thoughts upon what I've spoken about. And if you want any more information or anything, please feel free to contact me. You can either friend request me through the group here, through the Facebook page. You can take a look at my website, even though I've got to update it. I'm sorry, I'm really useless at technology, but it's www.bestbehaviour.org. Or you can email me, Natashya, but it's Natashya @bestbehaviour.org. Or message me through Facebook. If you have any questions or would like any help and advice. Thank you, Ruby, for setting this conference up. It's amazing. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Natashya McLaren. That's really kind. Thank you. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so excuse me for getting a bit excited and maybe speaking a bit too fast. But as you can probably tell, this kind of, especially with puppies, building these strong associations young on, is something I'm massively passionate about. And looking at that big picture, remembering to consider not just the external influences, but also the internal influences, and ensuring that we are meeting all of our puppies' needs and requirements with diet and nutrition, adequate sleep, making sure they can go to the toilet and eliminate as and when required, and giving them the right type and the right levels of interaction and training, and building those positive, strong associations, because they will go through them to life. I've only taught lots of people and lots of puppies, but I've got lots of experience of my own dogs. I've worked, my lovely dog Jen, who's just up here, my beautiful old girl collie, sadly passed away 4 years ago now. She was my teacher. I rehomed her. I call her rescue because she was actually really a rescue. It's a long story, but she taught me a lot, and she taught me a huge amount about diet. That was the first thing I learned about with her, and that was the first change I made that had a huge influence on how she behaved. That then made her more able to respond to the training than I did with her, using the positive reinforcement, and also ensuring, being a collie, that she had adequate levels of interactions and training, but also sleep and rest, because otherwise she would become massively overstimulated, and she wasn't then having the right levels of serotonin because she was getting stressed, and then she wasn't able to sleep and rest. So we ended up with this real issue. So I had to make sure she was getting enough rest. So yes, and also having privilege enough to rearing puppies as well myself, and having my own puppies living with us, and then growing up to be lovely adult dogs. So it's been lovely speaking to you all, and I've realised I've said so too many times. That's something I'm going to have to work on, training myself to stop saying. But it was lovely, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I really appreciate that, because like I mentioned earlier, I know we're all very busy people, so it means a lot that some of you have come here and actually listened to what I had to say. But enjoy your puppies, really focus on those nice behaviours, the calmer behaviours. Don't ignore them, give them feedback and reinforce them with yummy food, with praise, and make life desirable for them and for you by focusing on the things that you want from them. Okay, it's lovely speaking to you all. I'm nearly out of time, so unless anybody has any questions, I will call it a day. Okay, Natashya, getting your first puppy next week. Oh, brilliant, thank you. I'm so glad that's helped you. So yes, so get that nice rest area set up ready for when your puppy comes. Have a real look into diet. Like I say, I haven't gone into that too much because it's such a controversial issue and there's lots of different opinions on it, but do research it. Please feel free to reach out to me, and if I can help in any way, let me know. But great, thank you. Yes, and remember, focus on the behaviours that you want. Make sure your puppy gets enough sleep, that you are keeping an eye out for the toilet training with regular access to outside and appropriate interactions for the puppy's age with sight, sound, sense and physical interaction. Sorry I can't go into too much of that, but that's a whole kind of talk in itself. Everything I've spoke about really could have at least an hour on each individual subject, but I've kind of tried to look, do an all-rounded view, those 4 main behaviours, remembering the attention, the touch, the drop and the down. And thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Oh, how much sleep does a 6-month-old... Oh, Oliver, sorry, I nearly went then, sorry. How much sleep does a 6-month-old puppy usually need? So they say 18 to 20 hours. And again, everything, so the problem is with puppies, there's no such thing as the average puppy. All the information we have is based on the average puppy, which is really tricky. So a 6-month-old puppy is going to need less than a younger puppy. However, it does depend upon that individual. So again, this is what I'm always going to talk about. So I would be looking at, that 16 to 18 hours of sleep a day, depending upon the level of stimulation exercise. So always have these, it depends upon. Those that work with me understand when I talk about these things, because we have to look at the individual in front of us. But I would be basing it on that 16 to 18 hours a day, but then looking at, is the dog getting the right level of exercise? Is it getting too much exercise? Is it becoming maybe stressed in situations so it needs help with life experience, and we need to work on reinforcing good behaviours in situations and exposing it to these situations maybe at a lower level. But yeah, I would say, sorry Olivia, it's like a massive round the question, but I would say you'd be safe looking at that 16 to 18 hours a day. And again, don't forget hormones play a big influence in that. And a 6-month-old puppy may well be having surges in hormone levels, which will affect sleep. So that may mean it gets more disrupted sleep. Okay, any other questions? I'll give it a couple more minutes because I nearly missed Oliver's one. It's like countdown time. But yeah, sadly, everything is, like I mentioned, all the information is always based on the average. Yeah, he's right on adolescent. Yeah, he will be. And that's what I was saying about that internal influence. So hormones, we need to be really kind to our adolescents because, bless them, we need to remember back to our teenage years. And don't forget what a puppy covers in kind of 12 to 18 months. We take 16 to 18 years to do in developmental terms of both physical and hormonal and life kind of development. So our puppies have to do a lot in a very short space of time, and I think our expectations are way too high. Puppies jumping is a normal behaviour, puppies biting is normal behaviour, puppies barking is a normal behaviour, puppies having accidents in the house, all normal behaviours. And you will generally find as well at different milestones within their development, we will get regression maybe in behaviours, because things like toilet training sometimes can be affected by teething, and all these things are influenced by hormones. So hormones are what regulates the biological functions in our bodies. Going back to the diet, you know, it's really, really important we get that right, because if that's not right, then the hormones are going to be affected and everything in the system is going to be affected, which will eventually be seen in behaviours. And remember, everything we've done here can be done with dogs of any ages, a puppy of any age. Look at those things and make sure their needs are being met. Right, okay, I don't think there's any more questions. I will come back on once I've reloaded this to see if anyone has any questions or any comments. But thank you so much for listening. I feel like I've just bombarded you with loads of information and talked at you. But like I say, hopefully you found it useful. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Bye.